The letter was hidden beneath a stack of old books, tucked away like a secret she never wanted me to find. I wasn't even looking for it, just cleaning up the room she used to sit in, the one that still smelled faintly like lavender and heartbreak. My hands trembled as I opened it, not because I expected closure, but because a part of me hoped she had left behind a reason. Her handwriting, familiar and sharp, danced across the paper like a whisper from the past. She wrote about the nights she lay awake beside me, pretending everything was fine, about the smile she wore like armor, and the way silence between us grew louder than any fight we ever had. She said she loved me, but she was drowning. And I never noticed. She wrote about her dreams, the ones she never shared because she thought I wouldn't understand. How she once wanted to paint, to travel, to feel the wind of a place where no one knew her name. She said she didn't blame me, but every day she lost a little more of herself trying to be what I needed, and I never asked what she needed. The part that hit hardest, she said if I'm reading this, it means she's finally chosen herself. Not someone else, not a dramatic goodbye, just a quiet decision to stop surviving and start living. She thanked me for the good times, for the way I once made her laugh so hard she cried, but she also asked me to forgive her for leaving without a final word. Because she couldn't risk me talking her into staying. I sat there for hours, the letter folded in my hands like a confession I didn't know I needed. It didn't answer all my questions, but it told me one truth I could never ignore again. Love isn't just about being there. It's about seeing, hearing, feeling, and fighting for the pieces of someone they're afraid to show. That night I didn't sleep. I couldn't, not because I missed her, though I did, but because I realized I had loved her in all the ways I knew how. But never in the way she needed most, and sometimes the people we lose were never ours to keep. They were just a mirror, showing us everything we refused to face about ourselves. It was never meant to be found, at least not easily. The letter lay hidden beneath a stack of old books, yellowed with time, dust forming a fine layer across their spines. I wasn't even looking for it. I had come into the room with nothing more than a half-hearted intention to tidy up, to try and remove the traces of her absence that clung to every corner like a shadow. It had been days, or maybe weeks, since she left. Time felt elastic. Some moments stretched unbearably, while others collapsed into themselves, leaving me breathless and confused. That room, once vibrant with her energy, had become a strange museum of memories. Everything remained just as she had left it. A coffee mug on the windowsill, her scarf draped carelessly over the back of a chair, a book with a cracked spine open to a page I never understood. I hadn't had the courage to touch anything. Maybe I was hoping she'd walk back in, annoyed that I'd let things sit in disarray. Or maybe, deep down, I knew that changing anything meant accepting she wasn't coming back. It was while shifting a few of those old books, ones I hadn't seen her touch in years, that the envelope fell to the ground, plain, unmarked, light as air but heavy in my hand. There was no name on the front. No date, no instructions, just a piece of time folded neatly and sealed, as though she had left a part of herself behind for me to stumble upon when I was finally ready. Or maybe not even then. Maybe it wasn't meant for me at all. I stared at it for what felt like forever. My fingers trembled, not because of fear, but because of the unbearable possibility that the letter held answers I wasn't prepared to face. There was no dramatic music, no cinematic build-up, just silence, a silence so thick it seemed to press against my chest. For a moment I considered putting it back, leaving it buried just as she had hidden it, but curiosity, or perhaps guilt, got the better of me. I broke the seal carefully, like I was opening a wound. The paper inside was slightly crinkled, as if she had held it for a while before hiding it away. Her handwriting greeted me like a ghost, familiar and intimate. I hadn't seen her words in weeks, not even a message or a note, and now, here they were, lines of ink that had waited patiently to speak. She had written it with emotion, that much was clear. The strokes of her pen were uneven, hurried in places, thoughtful in others. The first sentence wasn't an apology or even an explanation. It was a whisper. If you're reading this, I couldn't say it to your face. I paused. Already, her words felt like a presence in the room, curling around the silence I had lived in since she left. She had anticipated this moment, had imagined me finding the letter. Maybe that's why she hid it. because she wanted distance between the words and my reaction. She had written about us, about how things used to be when love was new and everything felt infinite. She mentioned the way I used to look at her, like I saw every part of her and still wanted more. She spoke of laughter in the kitchen, late, night talks under a blanket, long walks without destinations. But those memories were wrapped in a soft kind of sadness, like she was mourning them as she wrote. And then, slowly, the tone shifted. She began describing the silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that creeps in when two people begin to drift without realizing. She confessed how she had started feeling invisible, even when I was right beside her. How her voice, her feelings, her presence seemed to shrink in the spaces we shared. She didn't blame me. That's what hurt the most. She said it gently, like someone offering a gift wrapped in sorrow. She said I had been good to her in all the ways I knew how, but somewhere along the way I had stopped seeing her fully. I saw the version of her I had fallen in love with, not the person she was still becoming. And in doing so, I missed her completely. She explained how the letter came to be. It wasn't a planned goodbye. It was written on a night when she couldn't sleep, when the weight of everything unsaid had finally become too heavy. She hadn't known then if she would leave, but she had needed to speak, even if only on paper. The act of writing it, she said, gave her clarity. It helped her realize that staying in a place where she felt unseen was slowly erasing who she was. And so she made the choice, not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of the quiet, painful realization that love should never cost you yourself. As I read on, I realized the letter wasn't meant to explain everything. It wasn't a map or a guide. It was a fragment, a final echo of someone who had loved deeply and left quietly. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't offer false hope. What she gave me was something else, truth. And in that truth was a mirror I hadn't expected. She ended the letter with a line that struck through me like lightning. I hope one day you understand that I didn't leave you. I just stopped leaving myself behind. The letter slipped from my hands and floated to the floor like a leaf surrendering to the wind. For the first time in days, I let the tears fall, not just for her, but for the version of me that never truly saw her. Finding that letter wasn't fate or drama. It was raw human truth, left in a quiet room beneath forgotten books, waiting for me to be ready to see what I had refused to notice all along. The scent in the room hadn't changed. It clung to the air like a ghost, soft, floral, unmistakably hers, lavender, with just a faint trace of something warmer, deeper, maybe vanilla, or the last perfume she wore when she still smiled without forcing it. I had always thought it would fade in a few days. Scents are fragile, fleeting, but this one stayed. Not just in the fabric of the cushions or the sleeves of her sweater still hanging on the back of the door, but in my chest, where it stirred memories I had tried not to breathe in. The room was still hers, even though she wasn't there. Every corner echoed with the essence of someone who had once been fully present, but was now completely gone. Her mug sat on the windowsill, untouched, with a faint ring of dried tea inside. The blanket she used to wrap around herself while reading was still bunched in the corner of the couch, like she'd just stepped out for a moment, but she hadn't. She wasn't coming back. And yet everything remained, untouched, preserved, like a shrine to the life we'd built together and slowly let fall apart. I found myself walking in there more than I admitted to anyone. I didn't sit. I didn't clean. I just stood, inhaling the quiet. It wasn't peaceful silence. It was the kind that grips you by the throat, the kind filled with questions no one is around to answer. I would stare at the books she stacked carefully on the shelf, the old Polaroids we once laughed over, the worn edges of the rug she always said we should replace but never did. They weren't just objects anymore. They were ghosts of her reminders she had lived, loved, and lost herself slowly right here. Even in her absence, her presence was overwhelming. I could still see her silhouette, wet in the way the curtain shifted when the window was open. I could hear her laughter in the faint creak of the chair she used to rock in while thinking. The way the afternoon sun filtered into the room felt like it was searching for her, lighting up the same spots she used to curl up in. It was painful how ordinary everything still looked, how nothing had burst into flame or crumbled or shattered after she left. The world didn't notice she was gone, but I did, and so did this room. Sometimes I'd sit on the edge of the bed, careful not to disturb the imprint her body had left on the mattress. It's strange how memory embeds itself not just in the mind, but in fabric, air, and time. The pillows still carried strands of her hair. Her charger was still plugged in, as though she might walk in and ask where her phone was. I couldn't move anything. I didn't have the strength to admit that her departure wasn't temporary. Deep down, I think a part of me was bargaining, hoping that if I left everything exactly as it was, the universe might notice the ache and bring her back. But it didn't. Days passed. The smell remained. The weight of her absence pressed deeper into the walls. Her favorite pen, half used and uncapped, rested on the table like she had just stepped away from journaling. A tiny dried flower sat in a glass by the mirror. I remember her picking it up on a walk and saying she wanted to keep it because it looked fragile but had survived a storm. I didn't understand the significance then. I do now. I'd run my fingers along the edge of her dresser, touching the things she touched last. Jewelry still in its tray, notes she wrote to herself, quotes, reminders, tiny fragments of thought. It felt like she was still speaking, if only I listened closely enough. But there were no new words. No new laughter, just echoes, faded scents, and unanswered silence. Sometimes late at night I'd stand in the doorway, unable to cross the threshold. That room became both a haven and a punishment, a place filled with her, and a place that reminded me she was no longer mine. I would whisper apologies to no one, as if the air might carry them back to her. I'd close my eyes and try to feel her arms, her voice, her breath. But memory is cruel. It gives you just enough to ache, never enough to feel whole again. The scent, though, it never faded. It was the last part of her to leave, and when it finally does, I think that will be the day I stop standing in that room. Because if she's no longer in the air, then she's truly gone. And I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. I didn't expect to feel anything when I touched the envelope. At first, it was just paper, thin, weightless, and silent, but the moment I picked it up, something inside me shifted. My hands weren't just trembling from surprise, they were trembling from something deeper. Fear, regret, hope, all tangled together in one fragile motion. There's a strange heaviness in a letter left behind by someone you love, especially when they didn't say goodbye. It's not just ink on paper. It's everything unsaid, everything unresolved, everything you didn't know you needed until it was too late. I held it for minutes, maybe longer, just staring. My breath slowed. My chest felt tight. There was no name written on the front, but I knew it was for me. Who else would it be for? She didn't have family nearby. No friends came to visit anymore. Just us, just me, and now just this. There's a strange intimacy in seeing someone's handwriting after they're gone. It's like they're speaking from a different place, one beyond time, beyond the hurt, beyond the moment they made the decision to leave. Her letters weren't round and soft like most people's. They were sharp, intentional. Even her words had posture. She had always been like that. Careful with the things she gave away, her love, her laughter. Her trust. She didn't hand them over easily, but when she did, it was real. The first stroke of ink gripped me like a hand around my throat. Not because it was angry or bitter or even emotional, but because it was calm. Too calm, like she had already cried all her tears before writing it. That quiet stillness scared me more than any dramatic outburst ever could. There's something terrifying about someone you love reaching a point of peace. Without you, she didn't start with "I'm sorry." She didn't explain why she left in neat bullet points. No dramatic declarations. Just a single haunting sentence. Asterisk, asterisk. If you're reading this, I couldn't say it to your face. Asterisk, asterisk, that line stayed with me. It wrapped itself around my bones. She had wanted to speak to me. She had thought about it. Maybe even rehearsed it in her head over and over. But when the time came, she chose silence over confrontation. Paper over voice, distance over closeness, that told me more than the rest of the letter ever could. Still, I read on. I had to. Every line felt like opening a sealed box I had buried deep inside myself, one I didn't want to admit existed. She spoke gently but truthfully. She remembered moments I had forgotten, the way I used to bring her coffee before she even asked, the way we once danced in the kitchen barefoot, laughing with flour on our cheeks, the way she used to catch me staring at her and pretend not to notice, even though she loved it. But then the shift came, subtle, like a shadow creeping across a bright wall. She wrote about the silences, the distance, the nights she felt alone even with my arm around her. She said she tried to reach me, not always in words, but in small things. The way she lingered in the doorway hoping for eye contact. The way she asked me if I was okay, secretly hoping I'd ask her the same. The way she changed her hair one morning, and I didn't notice. Not because I didn't care, but because I'd stopped looking. That part stung. Because it was true, not in a cruel way, but in the kind of way you don't realize until it's too late. I had loved her with everything I had, but I had stopped showing her that love in ways she needed. I gave her stability, presence, answers, but what she craved was attention, emotion, tenderness, and I hadn't seen it. Not because she was quiet, but because I wasn't listening. She didn't accuse me. She didn't shame me. She simply wrote her truth. She said the hardest part wasn't leaving. It was knowing how long she had stayed while slowly disappearing inside. She stayed hoping something would change. She stayed hoping I would notice before she faded completely. She stayed until she couldn't recognize herself anymore, and then, quietly, she left. I think what broke me most wasn't her departure. It was realizing she had made peace with it long before I knew anything was wrong. I was still holding on to something that had been slipping through my fingers for months, maybe years. As I read the final lines, I felt like I was standing in a storm I hadn't seen coming. She ended it simply, asterisk asterisk. I loved you deeply, but I had to learn to love myself more. Asterisk asterisk, there was no drama in it, just truth. And in that moment, I understood something I never had before. Sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes it doesn't end in a fight or a scream or a slammed door. Sometimes it ends in silence, in a letter, in trembling hands, in the quiet realization that someone once gave you everything they had, until they had nothing left for themselves. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. My hands were no longer shaking, but my heart was. I sat there for a long time, the room silent except for the sound of my breathing. No answers, no chance to fix it. Just the weight of her truth and the slow, painful awareness that I hadn't just lost her. I had missed the chance to truly see her while she was still here. She wrote about the nights she lay awake beside me, pretending everything was fine. It was only one sentence in the letter, but it exploded inside my mind like a revelation I never asked for. I read it again, then again. My eyes scanned the words, but my heart struggled to absorb what they really meant. She was right there beside me every night. I remember those nights clearly. At least, I thought I did. I remember how she would roll over to face the wall. I thought she just preferred that side. I remember how sometimes her breathing was slow and controlled, like she was already asleep. I thought she was tired. I remember reaching for her once, maybe twice, and feeling her flinch almost imperceptibly. I thought it was in my head, but it wasn't. Now I understood. While I drifted off each night, convinced things were okay, she was lying beside me, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with the pain she couldn't put into words, fighting a quiet battle I never knew existed. She was trying to hold herself together in the dark, wrapped in silence, inches away from someone who claimed to love her, and still she felt completely alone. She didn't cry, she said. She didn't want to wake me. She didn't want me to ask what was wrong because she didn't know how to answer, not in a way that wouldn't unravel everything. So she lay there, still and quiet, pretending sleep, pretending peace, pretending everything wasn't slipping away from her one invisible thread at a time. I hated how easily I believed everything was fine. I should have noticed the weight in her eyes, the tiredness behind her laugh, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes anymore. I told myself she was just going through something, that she'd be okay, that we'd be okay, but she wasn't. She was grieving slowly for a love that was still alive, but no longer nourishing her soul. She wrote that some nights she wanted to shake me awake, tell me everything, spill every fear, every unmet need, every growing ache inside her, but she was afraid I wouldn't understand, afraid I'd tell her she was being too sensitive, afraid I'd try to fix it with logic when what she needed was presence. Softness, real listening, so she swallowed it every night. She buried her pain like a seed inside her chest, and each sleepless hour let it grow. Reading those lines felt like being exposed, like someone had lifted the roof off my memory and shown me the truth I never wanted to see. She never yelled, she never accused, she just faded, little by little, and I let her. She mentioned one night in particular. She didn't name the date, but I knew exactly which night it was. It was the night I came home late from work. She was already in bed, curled up, her back to me. I slid in beside her, mumbled something about how tired I was, and closed my eyes. I didn't ask how her day was. I didn't notice she had been crying. I never even touched her. She lay awake the entire night. Not because of me, at least, not directly, but because she realized in that moment that she didn't feel like someone's love anymore. She felt like someone's habit, and that realization changed everything. I was there, but I wasn't asterisk with asterisk her. And that is a difference I never understood until it was far too late. Love isn't about sleeping beside someone every night. It's about seeing them, even in silence. It's about asking the questions that scare you. It's about creating space so the person next to you doesn't have to pretend they're fine while their soul is starving. She had been surviving beside me, quietly, invisibly, hoping I would notice, hoping I would remember how to feel her. But I didn't, and now all I have is this sentence in a letter, and the ghost of 100 nights I will never get back. She spoke of the smiles she wore like armor, and the way silence between us grew louder than any fight we ever had. That line broke something in me, because I remembered those smiles. They weren't fake, not exactly. They were polite, careful, the kind of smile you give when you want to avoid questions, the kind that says, "I'm okay, even when you're unraveling. I used to be grateful for them. I thought they meant we were past the hard parts, that we were stable." I mistook silence for peace and her restraint for strength. I didn't realize her silence was actually exhaustion, and that her smiles were a mask she wore to keep from falling apart in front of me. She didn't say it directly, but I know now. She was tired of pretending everything was okay just to keep me comfortable. She was tired of playing the role of the strong, patient partner, holding things together while I coasted through the relationship, believing everything was fine because there was no shouting, no breakdown, no threats of leaving. But she was leaving, slowly, not with her feet, but with her spirit. Her absence started long before she walked out the door. It started in her eyes, in the way she stopped telling me about her day, in the way she nodded instead of laughing, and in the way she smiled only with her mouth and never her eyes. We never really fought. Not in the way some couples do. We didn't scream at each other, we didn't slam doors, we didn't break plates. That used to make me proud. I'd say things like "we don't argue," like it was a badge of honor, but now I understand the silence between us was a storm we never faced. It was the coldest kind of conflict, the kind where nothing is said and everything is felt. She wrote that over time it became harder to speak her truth. That whenever she tried, I would brush it off or minimize it. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't feel the urgency she was feeling. I thought, we'll talk later, we'll fix it eventually, but eventually never came. And later turned into never, so she stopped speaking. And when someone stops speaking, their heart starts screaming in other ways, in withdrawal, in distance, in those small, mechanical smiles, in the long silences after "how was your day?" In the way they avoid eye contact when they say, "I'm fine." I should have known, I should have noticed, but I was busy measuring love by the absence of conflict instead of the presence of connection. I thought no fighting meant we were good. I didn't realize it meant she was tired of trying. The truth is, silence can be louder than any fight. It echoes. It fills the room, the bed, the mornings and nights. It follows you like a shadow, cold and still, reminding you of everything that isn't being said. We shared so much space, but so little of ourselves, and in that stillness she began to disappear, first emotionally, then physically. When I read that sentence, I realized how blind I had been, how easy it was for me to miss the quiet suffering of someone I loved because I was too focused on the surface, on convenience, on comfort. She had been living beside me, not with me, and I had accepted that because it required less of me, less vulnerability, less effort, less emotional presence, and now all I can hear is the silence she left behind. The kind that lingers, the kind that says, "You didn't listen when I was still here. Now you'll listen in the quiet." She said she loved me, but she was drowning, and I never noticed. Those words didn't just sting. They shattered something inside me. Because love and drowning are not supposed to exist in the same breath, and yet for her they did. She loved me, deeply, fully, honestly, but that love came at a cost. A quiet, invisible cost that built up over time while I stayed blissfully unaware. She wasn't asking for more money or attention or grand gestures. She was asking for space to breathe, for the kind of emotional presence that doesn't just show up, but asterisk stays asterisk. She was sinking beneath the weight of everything she had to carry alone, all while I stood on the shore, thinking we were floating together. She wrote that she had moments when she'd sit on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing, trying to remember the last time she felt asterisk light asterisk. Not just physically rested, but emotionally free. She couldn't recall it. Not because there weren't good days, but because even in the good ones there was a pressure inside her chest, a tightness, a sadness she couldn't name. And the worst part, she didn't know how to tell me. I thought I was giving her everything, love, loyalty, consistency, but in reality I was giving her asterisk what I thought love looked like asterisk, not what she truly needed. I didn't notice how much she was sacrificing to hold us together, how she always made space for asterisk me asterisk, for my bad moods, my silences, my stress, but rarely asked me to hold space for asterisk her asterisk, and I never offered. She described it like water slowly rising, at first just around her ankles, easy to ignore, then her knees, her waist, and still she smiled, still she showed up, still she tried, until one day it was at her neck. And I still didn't see it. I thought everything was normal, but she was gasping for air in a room where I thought we were safe. The image haunted me, her drowning in love, in the very thing that should have saved her. She didn't blame me in anger. She wrote it with softness. That's what killed me. She still loved me. That love hadn't vanished, but it wasn't enough to keep her above the surface anymore. She needed room to be her asterisk own asterisk person again, not just someone existing in the background of my life. She needed more than presence. She needed to be asterisk seen asterisk, and I never saw how deep the water had gotten. Reading that sentence made me realize something devastating. You can love someone with your whole heart and still fail to keep them from breaking. Because love by itself is not enough. It needs awareness, listening, daily acts of noticing. It needs to ask, are you okay? And truly mean it even when they're quiet, especially when they're quiet. She was screaming through her silence, and I missed it. Now all I'm left with is the sound of that line echoing through my mind asterisk she loved me, but she was drowning. Asterisk and I was too far away to throw the rope. She wrote about her dreams, the ones she never shared because she thought I wouldn't understand. That line hit like a slow, unfolding ache, because I thought I knew everything about her. I thought love meant full access. Every thought, every hope, every corner of her soul. But it turns out there were parts of her she kept locked away, not because she didn't want to share them, but because she didn't believe I'd asterisk see asterisk them for what they were. She had dreams, quiet ones. Wild ones, messy, beautiful, unreasonable dreams, and she buried them to keep the peace. She wrote about how, in the beginning, she almost told me everything. How she used to imagine opening up about the little things that made her heart beat faster. Learning another language, opening a bookstore cafe in a town by the sea. Traveling alone just to feel lost and free, painting again, writing poetry. Dancing barefoot under the stars like she used to when she was 17. But every time she hinted at those dreams, I changed the subject, or I laughed a little, or I asked practical questions like, how would that even work? Without realizing that every comment chipped away at her courage. Not because I was cruel, but because I didn't realize those dreams were asterisk fragile asterisk. They weren't plans, they were pieces of her soul, and instead of nurturing them, I treated them like distractions from real life. So she stopped talking about them. She learned to nod at my ideas and shrink hers. To make herself smaller so I wouldn't feel threatened, or confused, or inconvenienced. She said it gently in the letter, like someone who'd already forgiven me, asterisk asterisk. I didn't stop dreaming. I just stopped believing I could dream asterisk with asterisk you, asterisk asterisk, and that sentence. It was a quiet funeral. Not just for our relationship, but for all the versions of her that I never got to meet, the artist, the traveler, the reckless, laughing, barefoot girl who still lived inside her but had no room to breathe in the life we built together. I thought I was being supportive, providing structure, giving her stability, and in some ways I was. But I confused structure with safety. I thought safety meant keeping things asterisk predictable asterisk, when what she really wanted was the freedom to grow to evolve, to imagine more. She didn't need me to make her dreams come true. She just needed me to listen to them without judgment, to say, tell me more, to say, what would that feel like? Instead, I gave her logic, caution, realism, and that realism slowly became the reason she felt like she couldn't bring her full self into the light. I never asked what lit her up inside. I just assumed what we had was enough. And now I understand. Love without curiosity is not love at all. It's comfort, it's familiarity, it's presence without discovery. She had dreams, and she still does wherever she is now, but I won't be part of them. Because I didn't ask, and she stopped answering questions I never thought to voice. She said she didn't blame me, but every day she lost a little more of herself trying to be what I needed, and I never asked what she needed. That line, that simple, devastating truth, it dropped like a weight in the center of my chest and stayed there, pulsing, not blaming me. That almost made it worse. It would have been easier if she had pointed fingers, screamed, accused. Then I could have defended myself, apologized, tried to fix it, but she didn't want to be fixed. She wanted to be seen. She wrote it softly, like someone explaining a slow erosion rather than a single betrayal. There was no villain in her story, just a slow, quiet unraveling of who she was. She didn't hate me. She loved me enough to mold herself into what she thought I needed. Dependable, agreeable, low maintenance, fine. And I let her. At first it seemed like she was okay. She never asked for much. She adapted to my schedule. She changed her routines. She stopped asking to go out on spontaneous drives or bringing up plans that didn't fit into my world. She began making my favorite meals instead of hers, watching my shows, laughing at my jokes even when I knew they weren't funny, not because she loved all those things, but because she loved me. But while I was thriving in her quiet sacrifices, she was disappearing. One piece at a time. She said she didn't even realize it at first. That's the thing about slow loss. It doesn't announce itself. It creeps in. She stopped doing her hobbies. She stopped calling her friends. Stopped writing in her journal. Little things, the things that once made her feel alive, and I never noticed because she never complained and I never asked. I thought everything was fine. She smiled. She showed up. She kissed me good night, and because I never heard her break, I assumed she wasn't breaking. But she was, and she didn't resent me for needing things. She resented herself for giving so much without ever being asked what she needed in return. That was the part that shattered me. She wrote, you didn't ask, and I forgot I was allowed to tell you. That line keeps echoing, because love isn't supposed to erase someone. It's supposed to amplify them. Help them become more of who they are, not less. But she became smaller, quieter, for hoping I'd notice, hoping I'd look up and say, you don't have to do that, you matter too. And I never did. I let her shape herself into the version of her that was most convenient for me. The one who said, it's okay, every time I forgot something important. The one who smiled and said, whatever you want, when she had a different opinion. The one who disappeared a little more each day, so I could keep believing everything was perfect. She never asked me to rescue her. She just needed me to notice she was fading, to ask, not what's wrong, but what matters to you, what keeps you going, what makes you feel alive, but I didn't. And so she learned how to disappear without ever leaving the room. Until one day, she left the room too. Now I walk around asking myself the question I never asked her. What did she need? And I'm haunted by the answer I'll never hear. She wrote about her decision to choose herself. Not someone else, not a dramatic goodbye, just a quiet decision to stop surviving and start living. There was no betrayal in her letter, no secret lover. No explosive ending. That's what shocked me the most, because when someone leaves you, your first instinct is to ask who they left you for. You want a face to blame, a story that makes it easier to process the pain. But there was no one else, there was only her. She didn't leave out of anger. She didn't storm out in the middle of a fight or slam the door for dramatic effect. She didn't pack her things while I was gone or leave me a final voice message soaked in tears. No, she left quietly, thoughtfully, with a stillness that made it hurt more, because it meant she had made peace with the decision long before she acted on it. She said she had been surviving for a long time. That life had turned into a loop. Wake up, be who I expect her to be, move through the day half. Numb, smile on command, sleep beside me, repeat. And at some point, even love wasn't enough to sustain her. Because love without space to grow becomes a cage, and the more she tried to be what she thought I wanted, the further she drifted from who she truly was. And so she made the most terrifying, courageous choice anyone can make. She chose herself. She didn't need someone new. She needed new air. She needed silence that didn't ache. She needed mornings where she didn't have to apologize for being too quiet, too emotional, too complicated. She needed to find out who she was outside of our shared routines and unspoken expectations. She said, I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I started remembering how much I was allowed to love myself. That sentence didn't just speak it, roared because it was never about me being a villain. It was about her finally realizing she didn't have to keep choosing everyone else at the cost of herself. She wasn't angry, she wasn't bitter, she was free, and that's what haunts me now, not the fact that she left, but the fact that I never gave her the space to stay and still be herself. Because sometimes the greatest love isn't the one that stays no matter what. It's the one that finally says, I can't keep losing myself in someone else's world. She didn't run, she didn't scream, she just walked away from a life that kept her small. And now I understand she wasn't leaving me. She was finally returning to herself. She thanked me for the good times, for the way I once made her laugh so hard she cried. It caught me off guard, this gratitude tucked inside a goodbye. I didn't expect her to say thank you. I didn't feel like I deserved it. I thought the letter would be filled with pain, maybe anger, maybe the sharp edge of finality. But instead, she gave me pieces of warmth. She reminded me that it wasn't always broken, that once what we had was beautiful. She remembered the way I used to make her laugh, not the polite kind of laugh, but the full, bodied, teary-eyed kind. The kind where she'd grip her stomach and gasp for breath, and I'd just watch her and fall in love all over again. We had those moments, real ones, the late night ice cream runs, the spontaneous dancing in the kitchen, the road trips with no destination, the private jokes, the shared looks across crowded rooms, the comfort of belonging to someone. She hadn't forgotten any of it. In fact, she wrote that those memories are what made it so hard to leave. Because loving someone isn't about hating them when it ends. Sometimes it's about loving them so much that it hurts to walk away, even when staying means losing yourself. She wrote, there were days I didn't feel like I could breathe, but there were also days I never wanted to be anywhere else but with you. And reading that, I broke. Because in all the guilt, in all the regret, in all the quiet post-breakup spiral, I had forgotten we once had something good. That before the silence, before the fading, before the letter, I was someone who made her feel joy. She didn't deny the love we had, she honored it, she remembered it with kindness, not as a lie, not as a waste, but as a chapter she would always carry with her, and in a strange, aching way that made it hurt even more. Because she left not because it was never right, but because it stopped being right for her. We often think of people leaving as an act of rejection, but it wasn't rejection. It was reverence for what we had and for who she was becoming. She thanked me, and I never even thought to thank her. Not for the laughter, not for the way she waded through my moods, not for the way she built a home out of chaos, not for the way she loved me even when I didn't know how to love her back fully. She remembered our beginning with tenderness, and somehow, even in goodbye, she gave me one last gift she didn't just leave. She reminded me that love, even when it ends, can still be real, still be valid, still be good. And that kind of grace stays with you longer than any goodbye ever could. She said she didn't leave because she stopped loving me. She left because she was afraid that if she stayed any longer, she'd forget how to love herself. That line didn't read like a confession. It read like a truth she had carried for far too long. A silent, aching truth she was finally brave enough to say out loud. Not to blame me, but to finally free herself. She hadn't stopped loving me, that was the part that hurt the most. Her love didn't disappear, it just became too heavy to hold. too painful to keep nurturing when it meant abandoning her own heart in the process. And as much as I wanted to believe that she had simply fallen out of love, the reality was far more complicated and far more human. She stayed long after she began losing herself. She kept giving, kept hoping, kept shrinking, bending, compromising, softening her voice, shelving her needs, until one day she didn't recognize her own reflection. She wasn't angry about it, just tired. Tired of forgetting her own worth in the name of keeping someone else comfortable. And I was comfortable, too comfortable. I never asked her when was the last time she felt like herself. I never noticed how her laughter changed, how her eyes dulled, how her posture quietly folded in. I told myself we were just going through a phase, but for her it wasn't a phase, it was a disappearance. She wrote, ***, I started loving you louder than I loved myself, and one day I woke up and realized I had gone quiet inside. ***, that sentence will never leave me. Because I saw her every day, I lived beside her, I heard her voice, I touched her skin, but I never heard the silence that was growing inside her, and that silence, it was filled with everything she could no longer say. I miss myself. I don't feel seen. I'm exhausted from carrying the weight of a relationship that feels one-sided. I'm starting to feel like a stranger in my own life. She didn't want to leave. She had wanted to be chosen differently. Not just with flowers and apologies, but with presence, with curiosity, with awareness. But when that never came, she had no choice but to make the most painful decision of all. The one where she had to break her own heart in order to save it. Leaving didn't mean she stopped caring. It meant she finally realized that her own heart had needs too. That love wasn't selfish, it was survival. And the irony, I thought she was happy because she never complained. But some people don't complain. Some people just endure, quietly, softly, until one day they're gone. She didn't leave for someone else. She didn't leave because she stopped loving me. She left because she remembered she mattered too. She deserved to hear her own voice again. She needed to become whole even if it meant walking away from something she once thought would last forever. And now I'm left with the echo of that truth. Sometimes the deepest kind of love is the one that forces you to finally choose yourself. Even when it means walking away from the person you still love. She said the hardest part wasn't leaving. It was realizing how long she had been gone before I even noticed. That line didn't accuse. It didn't scream. It just sat there quiet, devastating, and true. She hadn't disappeared overnight. It wasn't a sudden decision or a single moment of collapse. It was gradual, subtle, the kind of leaving that begins in the soul long before feet ever touch the door. She was gone in pieces. It started with the way she stopped telling me about the small joys in her day, then the way she stopped reaching for my hand first, the way she stopped asking me to stay up and talk, the way she'd walk into a room with softness and leave without making a sound. At the time, I thought she was just tired or distant or focused on something else. I didn't realize she was already halfway gone. She wrote that she waited. She waited for me to notice that her laughter didn't come as easily, that her responses were shorter, that her eyes didn't light up the way they used to when I walked into the room. She waited for me to ask, are you still happy? She waited for me to care enough to ask questions that might have led to difficult truths. But I didn't. I had mistaken presence for connection. I thought just being there was enough. That sharing space meant we were still together. But she was slipping through the cracks of that silence, and I didn't see it happening, not because I didn't care, but because I had stopped noticing. She wrote, by the time I left, I had already said goodbye 100 times. In my head, in my heart, in the way I stopped hoping you'd turn toward me again. It was a quiet goodbye. The kind that doesn't come with slammed doors or raised voices. The kind where a person dies a little each day, right next to you, while you're too distracted to see the light going out. And it made me ask myself something I hadn't before. How long can someone feel invisible before they become a ghost in their own life? She had been grieving the loss of us long before I ever knew we were in danger. That's what made it hurt so deeply, realizing I had been living in the comfort of something that was already slipping away, Her body stayed, her smile stayed, but her soul had been walking backwards out of our life, hoping I would notice. Hoping I would say, "Wait, come back, I see you now." But I didn't, and by the time I looked up, all that was left was the echo of what we used to be, and a letter full of truths I was too late to hear in person. So no, the hardest part for her wasn't packing, or leaving, or letting go. The hardest part was that she had already left long ago, and I never even noticed she was gone. She said she used to replay our early days in her mind, not because she wanted to go back, but because she needed to remember what it felt like to be chosen fully. That line wasn't nostalgic. It was lonely asterisk. It wasn't about missing the past itself. It was about missing how she used to feel in it. She wasn't longing for the restaurants, the inside jokes, or the late-night phone calls. She was trying to hold on to the version of herself that felt seen, wanted, alive. She remembered the way I used to look at her, the way I'd drop everything just to hear about her day, the way I made her feel like the most important person in every room. She wrote that, in the beginning, she didn't have to ask to be loved out loud. It just happened, naturally, effortlessly, but somewhere along the way that changed. She wrote that she became someone who watched me love her from a distance, still there, still in my life, but no longer at the center of it. She was no longer the one I asked deep questions to, no longer the one I looked at like she was made of sunlight, and though I still said "I love you," she stopped feeling it. That's the thing about love. It isn't just said. It's shown It's in the pauses, the small details, the checking in, the way someone listens when you're not saying anything at all. And when those things fade, the words mean less. She wrote, "I didn't need you to chase me forever. I just needed to feel like you still wanted to. That sentence gutted me, because I thought we had grown comfortable, safe, steady. But what I called comfort, she experienced as absence. She still loved me, but she missed the version of herself that felt chosen every day, not just in the beginning, not just when it was easy, but even when life got busy, messy, hard. She wasn't asking for grand gestures. She didn't need surprises or constant reassurance. She needed presence. She needed to be asked, "How are you really?" even after years together. She needed to feel like I still saw her as the woman I once pursued with everything in me. But I stopped choosing her with intention. And that's where it began to slip. She said she held on to the early memories not because she wanted to live in the past, but because in those memories she recognized herself She remembered how alive she felt when love was loud, curious, full of wonder. She wasn't asking for a time machine. She just needed to know that version of her. The one who lit up my world still mattered. But over time, she became someone I walked past in the hallway with a nod. Someone I texted on my way without a heart. Someone I kissed good night without really looking at, and she noticed. So no, she didn't want to go back. She just wanted to stop feeling like a memory in her own relationship. And I'll never forget how that feels, to read someone's good. By and realize they spent months mourning your love while you were still calling it home. She said she used to lower her voice just to keep the peace, until one day she forgot what her own voice even sounded like. That line didn't feel like a confession. It felt like a quiet scream, a truth that had been buried so deep it only surfaced when she was finally gone. She hadn't been silent because she had nothing to say. She had been silent because she was afraid that if she did speak, I wouldn't listen. Or worse, I'd listen and change nothing. She started small, letting little things go, biting her tongue, laughing off the moments that hurt, shrinking her opinions so they didn't sound like criticism, swallowing her needs like they were too loud for the space we were in, and I let her. I thought her quietness was peace. I thought her patience meant she was fine. I never stopped to wonder what it was costing her, because it's easy to love someone who never disrupts your comfort, easy to call it harmony when one person is always the one adjusting. She said she used to speak up in the beginning. She tried to tell me what she needed, what hurt, what felt off, but my responses were sharp or dismissive or too logical. I didn't meet her emotion with emotion. I met it with defensiveness, so over time she stopped raising her voice. Not because she didn't care, but because every time she opened her mouth and felt unheard, she lost a little more belief in the value of her own words. Until finally, silence felt safer than honesty. And silence, when it becomes a habit, isn't just a lack of sound, it's a loss of self, she wrote. Asterisk asterisk. I stopped asking for more, not because I didn't want it, but because I was tired of feeling like I was too much. Asterisk asterisk, that sentence crushed me. Because I never saw her as too much. I just didn't realize that every time I failed to hold space for her voice, I was telling her that asterisk less asterisk of her was easier to love. And now, looking back, I see all the ways she softened herself to fit into the shape of my comfort. All the ways she made herself smaller so I could feel big. All the words she held back because she was afraid they'd push me away. Even though asterisk not saying them asterisk was what pulled her away in the end, she forgot the sound of her own voice. Not because she was weak, but because I didn't make it safe for her to be strong. And that realization that love without listening isn't love at all is a silence I'll carry with me far longer than her goodbye. She said she used to believe love meant holding on until she realized that real love sometimes means knowing when to let go. That sentence felt like it had been carved from the middle of her chest, delivered without blame, just quiet resolution. And it flipped everything I thought I understood about love. Because in my mind, love meant staying, fighting, refusing to walk away no matter how hard it got. But in her heart, love had taken on a different shape, one that didn't look like holding on tightly, but knowing when the grip itself was causing pain. She wrote that for the longest time she equated loyalty with endurance, that leaving meant failure, that letting go meant giving up. So she stayed, even when it hurt, even when she felt alone, even when the version of us she believed in began to fade. She kept showing up, kept believing that love was about sacrifice, about sticking it out no matter how hollow it began to feel. But over time, she said, love without nourishment began to starve her. She wasn't blaming me. She was confessing the cost of trying to hold something together with her bare hands while I assumed everything was fine. She said she tried to convince herself that all relationships go through this, that love is messy, that emptiness is normal. But one morning, she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back at her. Not because she was broken, but because she was tired of loving in a way that only asked her to asterisk stay asterisk, never to asterisk thrive asterisk. She wrote, asterisk asterisk, I realized I was staying out of fear, not of you, but of losing the version of love I had built in my mind, asterisk asterisk that hit me like a quiet thunder. Because I believed that as long as we didn't fall apart on the outside, we were fine. But she was crumbling on the asterisk inside asterisk, and the most heartbreaking part, she still loved me, even as she walked away. She loved me enough to understand that staying would only leave us both emptier in the end. Because love isn't always about trying harder. Sometimes love is about letting someone go before they lose the parts of themselves they can't get back. She let go not because she stopped caring, but because she finally realized real love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself to keep it. Real love makes space for you to grow, even if that growth takes you away. She ended by saying, please don't hate me for leaving. I just couldn't keep pretending I was happy anymore. That final line didn't burn with anger. It didn't lash out or beg for sympathy. It was honest. Honest in a way that only someone exhausted by pretending could be, and it wasn't asking for forgiveness. It was asking for asterisk, understanding asterisk. She wasn't leaving to hurt me. She was leaving because staying meant lying to both of us. I used to think that if someone leaves, they never really loved you, but the way she wrote those words made me realize the opposite. Sometimes the deepest love is the kind that asterisk can't asterisk lie, not to you. Not to itself. She had tried, God, she had tried to stay, to smile, to believe that this was just a phase, that the hollow feeling in her chest would pass, that the quiet in the room didn't mean we were growing apart. She forced joy into her voice, held my hand when she felt cold inside, stood beside me even when she felt alone. She wasn't blaming me. She was telling the truth. She had grown tired of the gap between what she showed me and what she was really feeling. That gap had become too wide, too heavy, too unbearable. She couldn't do it any more. Not out of spite, but out of mercy, for both of us. She wrote, asterisk asterisk, you deserve someone who doesn't have to convince themselves to stay, and I deserve to wake up without the ache of pretending. Asterisk asterisk, that sentence broke me. because I realized I had been in love with a version of her that was fading, and I never stopped to ask why. I saw the changes, I saw the dimming in her spirit, the quietness that grew like fog, the way she stared out of windows longer than usual, but I never asked. I assumed we were tired, busy, distracted. I didn't think we were unhappy. But she was, quietly, deeply, and the bravest thing she did wasn't leaving, it was telling the truth. She could have stayed, gone numb, waited years, pretended a little longer. But that's not who she was. She chose truth over comfort, reality over illusion, and in doing so she gave me something I hadn't earned but deeply needed, clarity. She left, not because she stopped loving me, but because she started loving herself enough to stop living a lie. And now, every time I think of her, I don't see someone who walked away from love. I see someone who walked toward truth, even if it broke her heart to do it.